Well, this has truly turned out to be the best way, I think, to break in a new truck or car for that matter. So I'm following the Motor Oil Geek special where I changed my oil at 500 miles, 1500 miles, and 3000 miles. This video, I'm going to go over the results for the 3000 mile oil test, and I might need your help. I want to change from 0W20 to either 5W30 or 0W40 in my Ram Hurricane. I have a 2026 Ram Rebel with the standard output Hurricane. Love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. What oil would you like to see in this vehicle next? And I am going to test that and see how it performs with wear metals. Let's dive into the latest oil analysis. So the reason I say I think this is one of the best break-in methods you can do is because, well, the Motor Oil Geek is a tribologist and he actually recommends this on his YouTube channel. I'm just following his prescription. So as you can see here, if we just walk through the first, second, and third oil change. So the first oil change I had was at 600 miles, and you can see wear metals like iron, copper, there's other things in there like the silicon, all the break-in material is very high, which is, it's very normal for the first 500 miles. That's why you want to get it out of your engine as soon as possible. So your first oil change is at 500 miles, the second oil change, 1775 miles. I have half the amount of iron and a lot lower copper levels. That's related to the oil cooler, I believe, in these trucks. Lower wear metals overall. Everything else, the viscosity and everything else looks pretty good because we're on very short intervals. So the second oil change looked a lot better than the first, but still maybe elevated metals. Now let's move on to the latest oil change there, far left column. So I put 1,407 miles, which is the most amount of miles on any oil that's been in this truck. The first one was only 600 miles on that oil. The second one only had 1,175 miles on that oil. And now this one is 1,407 miles on the oil itself that was being drained out and tested. So 3,182 miles on the actual truck. Now, if you look at my aluminum is at 3 parts per million, the iron is at 4 parts per million, the copper's at 3, and everything else is just a lot lower. The silicon is a lot lower with more mileage. And what Blackstone actually sent back to me, they said, "We hope you've been enjoying your truck so far. It's the third sample that shows break-in material has mostly, if not fully, cleared out, seen as silicon and some of the other metals decreased again. Wear metals are all within good ranges, even given a parts per million per mile basis." So they're saying, if you just do the math on the universal averages in that column on the right, and how much mileage I have on this oil, they're saying that's really in line with what those universal averages would be if I were to take this to like 3,000 or 5,000 miles on that oil change. So they said that we'll mainly look for those metals to trend in a steady fashion, no contamination from the likes of dirt, water, coolant, or fuel turned up. Insolubles increased, but we're still quite low. Thanks to your oil filtration setup. Nice Hurricane engine at 3,182 miles. If I were to recommend a break-in to somebody, I would just say, go with what the Motor Oil Geek says to do. 500, 1,500, 3,000. And my next oil change, I'm almost at 5,000 now. I'm going to take it to the dealer because I want that registered on the Carfax. So when I sell the truck, I have not just my little book, but I have some evidence to the next owner. Or if someone's looking at a Carfax, they can see, hey, at least he changed it at 5,000 miles, even though I've done, that'll be my fourth oil change. I just think it's good to have that dealer register on the Carfax. So they're going to put 0W20 in this because that's what the dealer does. My question to you, to the audience is, I would like to go to a higher viscosity oil in this Ram Hurricane. I think I want to do either 5W30 or 0W40. I'm leaning towards 040 because that is what's in the high output Hurricane. And to me, this oil report, in my opinion, shows that I'm already to that point where I think I've got an established baseline with this 0W20 oil. Now, this 1,407 miles I have on this oil change, I actually had about 600 miles of towing. The trailer was maybe around 3,000 pounds, 2,500 to 3,000. It was a bass boat, not a massive heavy load, but it was in boost a lot, and it was using a lot more fuel. And for those interested, in that 600 miles of towing, I was mostly towing up and down the Front Range of Colorado, just hills and not any huge passes, but also you don't get huge downhill benefits. So lots of in Denver traffic, out of Denver traffic. I think my average was around 60 to 65 miles an hour using the cruise control towing that boat. And I could achieve about 16 miles per gallon right on the money towing that boat, which isn't that bad. Now, if you're towing at lower elevation, you're probably going to get a little bit bigger hit on the mileage. And also, if you're towing at like 70, 75 miles an hour or higher all the time, don't expect to get good mileage. The thing's going to be living in boost. Now, I'm going to start putting all of my oil analysis up on my website, thecarguyonline.com. I haven't decided quite yet how the user interface is going to look on this. I think I want to have a dedicated menu at the top that's just dedicated to oil analysis so that people can look at various different cars and what oil people are using and look at analysis from other people. I think we should crowdsource this information. I want to see this stuff in kind of an open format so that people can just search for a car up in the top here. If you're looking at the Toyota Tundra, a 2025, 24, whatever, it'd be really cool to see oil analysis provided by other people that have the truck. So then you'd be able to tell in 5 years, hey, some guy's been running 5W30 for 5 years. You'd be able to tell that thing has 100, 150,000 miles on it. You'd feel comfortable then switching to that oil rather than just taking recommendations from random YouTubers. So that's where I want to take this. If you guys have any input on how you think the user interface should lay out, hey, leave them in the comments. I try to read a lot of the comments. I get a lot of ideas for videos in the comments. Send me emails at cars@thecarguyonline.com. You guys have a lot of good ideas. Don't be afraid to send them my way, and I'll see if I can get that integrated into the website. Now, going back to the oil analysis on this Hurricane, if I'm just objectively looking at this, I think these wear metals are quite low compared to a lot of other brands I see. I'm not going to pull out those oil tests I've looked at in other brands like Toyotas and others. I think that their wear metals are higher. And I do think this still has something to do with the inline six and how it's designed. I think for boosted engines, and this is why I still recommend the Hurricane over almost any of the other boosted variants, the EcoBoosts have done well too, but the EcoBoosts are running 530. I think the Hurricane is just better suited to handle power. When you have a tiny displacement, so much power per liter packed in these 3 and 3.5 liter engines, the Hurricane has the most bearing surface to distribute that load. And then people go put Cat 6s on them and all sorts of other things and boost them more. You have higher cylinder pressures. All that power has to go somewhere. And it ends up in the rod and the crank bearings. Well, the more you can distribute that torque over more bearing surface, the higher likelihood you are to have a longer lasting engine, especially with these thinner 0W20 oils. Now, people say, oh, we've been running 0W20 in so many engines for so long, it's worked out just fine. I can't think of anyone that's running any of these high boost twin turbo V6s on 0W20 other than Toyota and Ram right now. Maybe I'm forgetting some, but the Ram's getting away with it, I think, because of their bearing surface. The Toyota, I don't think Toyota's getting away with it. They got that V6 with the smallest amount of crank bearings. Getty did a video on this recently. You should go check it out. He shows the bearing surface in his video. And what I believe is that if you put a 530 or a 040 on these high boost engines that are 3.5 liters, I think you're going to just be adding just an additional layer of protection in between that crankshaft, the rod bearings, just that extra little bit of snot in there to help it protect and prevent that metal on metal wear. I think that's going to make a huge difference for people, especially when the manufacturing, the tolerances are tighter, but we're looking at like the clearances actually being larger in these engines. When you look at Toyota's most recent recall, that to me says they're chasing something that's oil related. So when they're looking at camshafts, the timing chain tension and all those things, I think what Toyota's probably searching for is, why are we having maybe an oil starvation issue or maybe not enough oil being supplied to the crank at certain times? And they're thinking the contributor is a buildup of tolerance problems in other parts of the engine. Well, I think we could just completely get away from that if we go to 530 or 040. I think we can not worry about tolerances so much, or about having the perfect tolerances all over and clearances so that we have that variable oil pump delivering just barely enough oil into the crank and the bearings. We can just go the other route and say, you know what, let's put thicker oil in these. Sure, our mileage is going to take a 1 to 2 mile per gallon hit at most, what I'm guessing. I'm okay with that. So that's what I would recommend doing. Research your vehicle. Check to see if in the manuals for your Toyota Tundra or whatever it is, and it's just in America that you see 020, you're probably going to be just fine going up to that 5W30 or maybe a 040. Let me know what you guys think in the comments as always. I appreciate all of them. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this style of content. I'm trying to balance it out. I see a lot of problems and I don't want to just do doom and gloom. Don't buy this powertrain style content. I like doing this. I like building websites. I like looking at data. So if you like this style of content, subscribe and let me know. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Till next time.